All right. Welcome, everyone. I'm excited to have everyone here today. We're going to be going over enterprise grade edge device fleet management with Balena and FlowFuse. We have Mark join us today. We'll do a little bit of introduction in a second, but want to kind of give a little bit of housekeeping. We will be recording this, so if you want to watch it later or share it with somebody, you will have access to that. We'll have it on YouTube. Um, There'll be, if you want questions answered, please post them into the Q&A chat. Feel free to, say welcome, where you're from, what you're working on, and things like that, or how you might be able to use this. But if you have a specific question for us to answer, we will have a Q&A at the end for us to kind of go through. So with that, we'll go ahead and just get started. And my name is Gray Juba. I'm the OT data and community strategist here at FlowFuse. My background is automation and controls and manufacturing. Did a little bit of data analytics. I say a little bit. I did a lot of bit of data analytics while I was over at Splunk for a little bit, but really always knew I was going to come back around into the OT space and really focus on how we could improve this. I'm still stuck on the IT/OT convergence, and I still think that that's just something that I feel like there's a lot of things happening. I see these products coming out here, and this is really all just part of it. So excited to be here and host Balena, and I'll pass it over to Mark if you want to give your introduction.
Hey, great. Thank you for the invitation. So yeah, this is Mark. I'm developer advocate at Balena, and I'm computer engineer. I have been working the last, I don't know, 15 years on IoT, on multiple Internet of Things projects. And I'm here to help people to scale and manage multiple edge IoT devices. You want to start? Yeah, so
Sure, you can go for it.
probably, okay. So probably, yeah, most here we have seen this, right? This is an edge device, a Raspberry Pi, for example. Yeah, and when you have to do a project, right, it's on your table. That's super simple, right, to manage. If you need to flash a new operating system, or you need to update the application that you're running, or just connecting a new USB peripheral, that's super easy. But what happens when this grows, right? When you get into the next slide. And yeah, thank you. You will be my clicker. We need to we need to find a. But yeah, when this grows, yeah, that's start to be more complex and more complex to do specific operations. And when yeah, if you go to the next slide, when your project gets super successful and you have something like this, it's super painful to do operations like yeah, how to deploy a new firmware to these devices, how to manage multiple device types, for example. In this case, just paint in different colors or different shapes, different hardware that you can manage in your fleet. Because if your project is successful, what it's going to happen is that at some point, yeah, the hardware that you were manufacturing or the sensors are not going to be exactly the same. They will be upgraded. So how do you manage the software running on different hardware? How do you scale to larger fleets of devices? How do you update the operating system running on that? How do you fix security breaches that you have or bugs? So basically, as a developer, if you go to the next slide, Gray, please. Yeah, I always have seen this in my engineering mind. Like, okay, yeah, I think I can do this. I can fix this problem during the next weekend, right? So there is this Die Hard method. I love Die Hard movies, so there is always this Die Hard button where you can fix it. It's painful, but maybe it's gonna work. Maybe, if we have a lot of luck, serendipity, and randomness, maybe it's gonna work. Or there are companies such as Balena and others that helps to reduce the friction on these and just really quickly help you, yeah, to develop, deploy, manage, scale your IoT edge devices. So yeah, if you click the button deploy with Balena, then we get into this. So yeah, I work at Balena, big disclaimer. So we are going to use these. Everything that I'm going to explain today, it's compatible with any Linux operating system with Docker. So yeah, there is no lock-in actually here. And as you're going to see, all of our stack is as well open source. We have, of course, a premium product, but no lock-ins, no sales. It's just explaining to engineers how can you do yeah, to basically rapidly scale and deploy and manage your fleets of devices. But maybe you don't know what is Balena. So maybe if you know to the next slide, I would like to do a brief question to everyone who is listening to me now live or maybe recorded. Who knows this? Anyone? Please use the chat and say hello if you know what is this or if you ever use it.
We got a couple
Let's.
of hands raised in there.
Oh, wow. Okay, so yes, I know Alex. Hey, glad to meet you, Alex. Here. So basically, fantastic for years. Thank you, Hook. So basically, this is Balena Etcher. So Etcher is one of the most popular softwares that we built at Balena. And basically, yeah, if you never use it, it's a software basically made to flash SD cards or USB drive in case that you want to install Linux operating systems on PCs, laptops, or single board computers. If you ever used Etcher, you know how we do software, how we like to reduce friction on specific operations. That at the beginning we create Etcher because a lot of our customers were asking, okay, how can I flash SD cards or USB drives to flash Balena on my devices? And we were tired to say, hey, just use DD or use these tools on your operating system. So we just create something to try to reduce friction to most of the people. And now millions of people basically use it every month to flash the new operating system images on computers and PCs. But basically, yeah, if you go to the next slide, please. So basically, what is Balena? And actually, this is going back to the previous slide of the Die Hard. Basically, what we provide at Balena, it's whether you have one device or 1 million devices, we provide a secure containerized based technology stack to enable you just to develop, deploy, manage, and scale large fleets of edge devices that basically support Linux. We don't support microcontrollers. We don't support controllers. So we go from single board computers, which are devices with at least 1 gig of RAM, that basically can run Linux operating systems on it. And yeah, I think.
Sure, yes. So I'll give a little rundown. FlowFuse. A lot of people have heard of Node-RED, and what we do is we elevate Node-RED and we enable the deployment and management and development of your Node-RED applications in a secure manner that is collaborative and a continuous way that makes it enterprise. I mean, Node-RED was enterprise ready, but it really kind of makes it for your fleet management. Kind of what Mark was kind of alluding to is kind of you can do it with the hard way, but we make it the easy way. And that's kind of the pathway to kind of managing all of your Node-RED instances, backing up, and so forth. And we'll cover those here in a little bit. But really we elevate your Node-RED experience and continuously developing on the Node-RED application as well. So the FlowFuse platform, the way we function is we have a FlowFuse can be on-prem or in the cloud. We are open source as well. We have applications in which, in this particular case, we're looking at as like FlowFuse Cloud. And we have Node-RED instances in which we can deploy those Node-RED instances to devices. So when you think about devices, kind of think of them as they could be on-prem device or in the cloud device, or in this particular case, we're going to be talking about Raspberry Pis today. So we're going to be deploying Node-RED to Raspberry Pi devices. And we have a way to manage that deployment mechanism. And it's all about making your life and your management of your Node-RED instances easier. Mark?
So just to get a little bit more on the Balena platform and the stack. So I mentioned Balena, it's a secure container-based stack that enables you to deploy new software, run diagnostics, manage large amount of IoT edge devices in the wild. But what does it mean? What do you need to have that? So you need multiple parts of the stack. So the stack starts with Balena OS. on the left, the green one, that it's an open source operating system based on Yocto. We manage this. You don't need to know anything about Yocto, basically. And it's a minimal operating system optimized to run containers. Okay. Balena OS has AB partitions, so we have a security that, yeah, when you update operating system, everything runs well, and it's designed to run in the most adverse environment. So it's industrial grade operating system for embedded devices. On the top of it, as it only runs containers, well, this is open source, by the way. I think I already mentioned that. On the top of that, we have a container engine. We call it Balena Engine, which is based on Docker Moby project. And basically, yeah, it's a container system basically specialized for embedded devices. We added some improvements as Delta updates and others. So it's very lightweight to run on embedded devices. The next part on the stack, basically, it's what we call the fleet management tool, which can be two on Balena. Basically, one, it's Balena Cloud, which is our premium account, where that's the one that we are going to use on the demo today, where you can connect up to 10 devices for free forever. Or we have, on the other hand, Open Balena, which is exactly the same APIs, endpoints, etc. But basically, yeah, you don't have a UI. You have to run everything through a CLI, but you have the same, or most of the most used features that you can find on Balena Cloud using Open Balena, and this is open source. On the stack, we also have Balena Etcher because it helps to provision devices. We have a hardware as well called Balena Etcher Pro. And finally, we have something that we are going to talk probably at the end of this demo, which is Balena Hub, which is a marketplace for edge and IoT applications, as you're going to see in a bit.
Perfect.
Yeah. So to get more in detail, if we zoom in what's Balena OS and Balena Engine, yeah, I'm not going to get more into that because I think this is not the scope of this webinar, but basically to run Balena or to manage your devices with Balena, you need to deploy or you need to flash your single board computers. So just, today we're going to use Raspberry Pis, but we support more than 100 different device types on Balena. You need to flash Balena OS. And as I mentioned before, so we only run containers. So you cannot run anything on the host OS. Okay, so everything will run on Balena Engine. And actually, as I'm going to show in a couple of slides, some examples, but there is another special service, which is called Supervisor. You see on the top left, which is actually a transparent container that we run, which is an on-device agent, which is responsible of monitoring and applying all the changes that these devices or all the devices from your fleet need. So every device has a supervisor, and this supervisor is securely connected with Balena Cloud or Open Balena and makes all of the changes that this device needs to do in real time. So maybe if you go to the next slide, Gray, we see here, for example, one application that gets popular some time ago, which is a Ming stack. The Ming stands for MQTT, InfluxDB, Node-RED, and Grafana. And this is, for example, 4 of the containers that we can have running on Balena and that you can install in one click. But today, what we are going to do, if you go to the next slide, great, please. Yeah, we are going to run the FlowFuse device agent that FlowFuse just made. We are going to get into that in a second. And if we have time, maybe if you click to the next slide, we are going to try to run the device, the FlowFuse device agent connected to the FlowFuse cloud solution with InfluxDB basically running in the edge, storing the data from your flow. So
Absolutely.
I think we are ready, right?
Yeah, well, we'll give a little bit kind of how that we have 2 or 3 devices today, and similar to what Mark was just showing, but how today's demo work is we're basically going to be tying in that FlowFuse component where we have a FlowFuse Node-RED instance in the cloud, and then we're going to take a snapshot of that device, and then we're going to deploy that snapshot to all of our fleet. And we're going to go through the exercise of bringing on board those Balena devices and Node-RED instances into the FlowFuse application. So you can think about it's a very how quickly and easily it is to automatically add more devices and so forth inside of this exercise. And I know I'm looking up at that, but that's where I see Mark up there. So I'm going to try to look more directly ahead. But that's going to be today's demo. I think the next slide is there anything you wanted to cover here, Mark, or do you want to just kind of jump into the demo?
Yeah, I think, yeah, I mean, as explained before, we're going to use Balena Cloud. Yeah, this is a screenshot of Balena Cloud that we are going to use. Yeah, and we will manage all the software updates from Balena Cloud and from FlowFuse. As Gray explained, we're going to manage all the business logics
Perfect.
that these devices are going to run. Let's go.
Perfect. And so I'm going to leave this one here. We're going to just exit. I am going to be driving today. So I will be driving both the Balena application and the FlowFuse application. But to get started, the first thing I want to highlight is we have a blog post that was written by Ben, and I want to say that Mark was heavily influenced, helping in the back end of getting this up and running. But there's a couple of things that really makes your life easier. I'm going to center click on this GitHub repository where the required fields, because with this tool, we've been able to make it a one-click process. I'm going to move this over here to the right-hand side as well. And what I've said is deploy FlowFuse device agent with Balena. The first thing you would do is just click this button that says deploy with Balena. It's going to open up my Balena application in the client cloud, and I'm going to give it a fleet name. We're going to call this FlowFuse uh, and webinar. And we're going to click the default device, and it's going to be a Raspberry Pi 4. And we are going to create and deploy. And the next thing I need to do is I'm going to add Mark to this instance as well, or into this
Fantastic.
fleet.
So now what is happening, basically, we are creating a fleet. The concept of a fleet, it's basically a place where you can release new versions of your software, of your application. And basically every device that you add there is gonna run all the software that you deployed to that.
So,
Now,
yeah.
sorry, just to give more context of what happened. So when you click the deploy with Balena blue button from the GitHub repository from FlowFuse, what happened is that, yeah, you can see on the release box that it's building. What happened is that the Balena builders got all the GitHub source code. That basically it's a Docker compose. It's a super simple source code. And basically we are building that image that it's the one that we are gonna build on the devices.
So while that's happening, I'm going to go over to an instance in which we have already pre-configured some Raspberry Pis. And what I mean by pre-configured, the Raspberry Pis knows that Balena exists, but they have not installed anything on there. And when we move this over into the new fleet, which we just created over here on the right-hand side called FF Balena Webinar, is going to essentially take all that information off and rebuild that whole solution. So we're going to modify and we're just going to move it over to that application that we just created. And that is going to be the FF Balena webinar. And we're going to click move. And we're going to affect number 3 devices. Don't do it again, Mark. He got me earlier. He said, wait, right in the middle of me clicking the button. He's like, don't do that. But he just threw me off for a second. So, but basically now what's happening is it's updating. We can click on one of these. I'm going to click on the Gray's Raspberry Pi, and it's going to be downloading the service. And right now, so what that means is it's downloading the service, but the FlowFuse device doesn't know, the FlowFuse application running on the device does not know where home is just yet. So we're going to go through that exercise right now. There's a couple of things that we'll pay attention to at the bottom of this blog. There's a key command that we are going to convert that file. But how do I get that file in my environment? So I'm going to switch over to FlowFuse for a second. We're going to go basically into our application. Oh, of course, don't you love it?
Just in the right time, at the right moment.
Yeah, the demo people, but we're good. We're good. So a couple of things to highlight here is we are working within my Node-RED team and organization. So you can think of this as organization. So if you're like a manager of a Balena application and you're, let's say, a professional services team, you can then create teams within your organization so that you support, let's say, customer A, customer B, customer C, and so you can really keep things not really mixed together. Again, feel free to ask questions in the chat. But today, the process of adding a typical device, remember that hard mode that Mark was mentioning? The hard mode process to come over here and say add a device, give it a device name. We'll call this Balena 1 and the type of use, and then we'll select an application. And what it would do is, so let's say the Balena application, and I click add, and that gives me a single device YAML file that applies to one single device. But that's not really what we're really trying to strive here for. We really want to make your life as easy as possible. So what
That
if in
doesn't
the
scale,
FlowFuse
right?
application? Yeah, exactly. It doesn't scale. So within the FlowFuse application, we go to team settings, devices, and I can add a new device, and we're going to call this FlowFuse webinar, and we're going to assign this to an application that I've already created. It's called actually, we are not going to assign it just yet. We're just going to create, and I'm going to actually go and create that application. But this provisioning configuration is the key thing that we need to grab right now. So you can see it right now is over here on the right-hand side. It's trying to say, where is this FlowFuse YAML file, this device.yaml file? And we're going to give that to it now. So I'm gonna just copy this to clipboard. I'm gonna download it just in case I lose it in my clipboard. And I'm gonna open up, I've got a Linux instance right here, and we're gonna just nano device one.yaml. And I'm going to just paste that contents in there and Control X, and we're going to save it. And now what we're going to do is if we went back over here to this blog, what we have to do is we're going to convert it into a base 64 so we can easily add it as a variable device. So basically, once we send it over, FlowFuse knows to unpack it and make it into a readable structure that we can then incorporate it, and it's going to apply it to all of these Node-RED devices or all these say Raspberry Pis. So I'm going to copy this code real quick. I'm going to copy this code real quick. I could just click that little button, but it adds that, and we said device one, and we press enter. Now it has created this configuration variable. And when I come over here to not we're now we're going to go and instead of we're looking at a device right now, but what we really need to do is look at the fleet. We go to variables and we're going to add a new variable. And if you see down here, I'm going to minimize this. We're going to add it to all services, and it's going to be FlowFuse underscore device YAML. I'm actually going to paste this variable in first that we just created. That's what I pasted in from the command, which basically converted that text into base 64, the YAML file into base 64. And then we're going to add this variable called FlowFuse device YAML, and we're going to paste that here. So now when I click add, it's going to pass that variable down to my whole fleet of devices. Any new devices are going to be added as well. And the first thing I'm going to do is come over here and look at one of these devices. And actually, I need to click save. And so now it's saved and now it's applied. And now when I look at my devices, if I come back over to that Raspberry Pi I was looking at before, it goes, hey, we've got a new device. Now, I missed a step a second ago, and when I was in my FlowFuse. Remember when it said what application I wanted to bring it onto? I missed that part, so it's just actually bringing it into my FlowFuse. But if I would have said, "Hey, I want to bring this into a specific, let's say, auto assign," and I can even give it a specific snapshot. But we're going to do that all today. So I'm going to come over here to applications, and we're going to go down to my Balena application, and I'm going to create a new instance. And we are going to call this webinar, and we're going to make it a small instance, and we're going to do Node-RED 3.1.3. Now, what we're doing is we're creating a Node-RED instance in the cloud. Okay. And this is where we're going to do our development today. And then we're going to push that development that we've done in the cloud down to those devices. And we can even create a DevOps pipeline for that. So once we've done it, we can do a one-click, pass it all down. But we're going to say create instance, webinar. And now you see that webinar. Now, the thing that I should have done is we don't have any devices assigned to this. But when I go
Yet.
back over to team settings And if I should have done is I would have already created that application. And what I could have said, I wanted to just add it directly to webinar. So it automatically be populated over into my webinar application. It's not going to do that. I'm going to have to manually do that, but that's just a step that I could have gone back. But with the flow of the presentation today, I kind of held back. So we have these new devices now, auto provisions. These are the three that were just created. And what we're going to just do is add to instance. And that particular application is the Balena and then the webinar. And we're going to click add. We're going to do all three of these. Again, this would have been auto done for us. And oh, looks it saves it for us too. Look at that. All right. So now when I come back over to my applications, I'm going to go down to the Balena and I'm going to click on webinar. And now we are going to see those three devices. Now, what three devices are those? Those are those same three devices we see here. We see Pi 4 Barcelona, Gray's Pi 4, and then the billowing robot. All great. So, but the first thing we need to think about is we have an instance we're starting these devices up. We can actually go over to Gray's Raspberry Pi 4, and we're going to start seeing that configuration. But it doesn't have anything it's running yet. It just essentially has no JSON file that says which flow we're going to be doing. So the first thing we want to do is just open up our okay, but it's installing the instance right now, so we're gonna have to wait just a second while my Node-RED instances.
So,
But maybe simultaneously, let's talk about things that we want to run in parallel in tandem with this Node-RED device. Actually, we're good. It's running now. So I'm gonna open up an editor, and now I'm logging into the editor of my Node-RED instance in the cloud. Nothing is here.
so
You
great.
might
This
get a
is
little bit.
so what
Yeah,
you're gonna build here, the flows that you're gonna add on this Node-RED instance are gonna be deployed on all the three devices, right? Once you're gonna click
correct.
deploy.
Yeah, and we're gonna start off with installing a couple things. We're gonna do the influx because we're gonna see if we have time. We'll just install the InfluxDB
Yep.
one, and so we'll just go ahead and click install,
No, the
and
second
then
or
we're gonna do contrib os, I believe, and which basically finds some the details. So like let's say the memory, the
okay,
heart, or the space, and things like that. And we're gonna
great, yeah.
add that one as well. And then the last one we are going to add is the Node-RED data generator.
Good idea. You have a good taste
Node-RED.
of the.
And one of the things, ooh, let me just copy it from this one over here just so we can speed it up. And we're going to install that. So now we're just think about this. I'm now adding packages in the cloud, but those packages will also be deployed and installed on my remote devices down at the edge. And once that is all installed, I'm actually going to just make this speed up because we're at about 30-minute mark and I want to make sure we have some time and I can go through what's going on later. So the first thing I'm going to do is bring in a simple copy this JSON, sorry. And Control I is a quick way to import that JSON. So Control I or Control E for exporting if you want to bring things out. And
Oh,
I'm going to
wow.
drop these in real quick. Now, I'm going to expand this just a little bit if I can so we can see some things. Just a smidge and we can open that up. Oh, come on. Why aren't you working with me? We'll just expand this. And then I'll open up my debug node. And so you can kind of see what's happening. And when I click deploy, I'm going to run an inject node and we're going to create a data generator that's going to give me the latitude, longitude, speed reference, distance left on gas. I'm going to find my uptime parameters that are inside of my, right now it's my cloud, but when I deploy to the edge, it'll be the edge device. We're doing some moving around things and data management. We're also going to grab the memory, and then we're going to control this into something that I've already thought about will be prepared for InfluxDB in the structure that I would like to see. So when I click inject, I need to make sure that I have my debug node turned on so that I get that details. So let me just click inject again. And now we can see that payload coming into our environment. We actually don't want store, we just want payload. And you can kind of see exactly what we have coming in. We don't have device ID, we don't have device name, we don't have the device type. These are things that are environment variables associated to when it's deployed to a device. So these are unique IDs that you can support, say, where did this device come from? And now we're going to store them into an InfluxDB and InfluxDB installed locally on that device. So for now, we're going to pause and we're going to deploy this to our edge devices. And we're going to go through that exercise right now. So if I look at my devices, I have no deployed snapshots. So what I want to do is go over to my snapshots for this particular device, and we're going to create a snapshot. We'll call this init, and we're going to set a target. What that means is say deploy this snapshot that I'm about to create to all of my devices in the field. And now, anytime I add a new device to the field, this is the snapshot that it will receive. And I'm going to now drag it over here to the left-hand side so maybe we can see some of the conversations happening, installing our dependencies, updating information, and doing all the things that we want. Well, this is going on right now. I'm going to install our device, not the device agent, but the InfluxDB. So similar to the process we went before, we're going to deploy with Balena.
Mm.
Mark, I'm going to go a little bit slower so I make sure that I don't skip anything. I need to go to use an
Yeah,
existing fleet
exactly.
instead. And we are doing FlowFuse Balena webinar, confirm, right?
Indeed,
Yep.
yeah.
And deploy to fleet. So now,
Mhm.
simultaneously, as we're getting these Node-RED instances up and running, we are now adding another package. I don't know if that's the right terminology, but another, let's say, container to the Balena solution. So if I come over here to the Pi 4,
Let me attach this
it,
on the chat.
just making sure, can you double check and look at the services? I should be seeing my, maybe I need a refresh. Shouldn't I see another service running down here below, or did I not do
No,
that correct?
this is built. If you go to the fleet, if you click, yeah, click here. Well, click to, yeah, this is building right now. So
Okay, perfect.
as
Thank you.
as before, so it is on the builders, and if you check the Docker compose of the GitHub repository that I shared just on the chat, you will see that, yeah, we have the device agent as we had before, and we are also deploying InfluxDB 1.7. Yeah, it's an old one, but yeah, just for the purpose of this demo was just enough. So once it will be built, the supervisor that is running on each devices is gonna receive,
Perfect.
hey, we have a new version for you, and it's gonna download it and deploy it. So it's a
Perfect.
matter of like 3-5 minutes to get it there. But yeah, maybe you can show how to, yeah, how are we gonna use InfluxDB on the on your flows? Can you show how to add
Sorry.
InfluxDB on FlowFuse?
Yes, absolutely. That's what my next steps are. And that's what I was going to
Okay,
do is just kind of look at and see the devices now deployed on our local environment. So you can see now we have a Raspberry Pi, the Pis, and these are all taking what the initial snapshot of this into our device. So now let's dive into those and see what's going on. So if I click on Gray's Raspberry Pi and I click on developer mode and I enable it, it opens up a new window and allows me to go into device editor. So I can see exactly what is
nice.
running on those devices locally. So anywhere you are, you can troubleshoot these devices. You can even take snapshots of it. Of course, the demo, I wonder if there's, just see just for a second, because we haven't tried to do these all simultaneously. So there might be things because it's running in the
Yeah,
background, but let me open up the device editor
yeah.
again.
Maybe
Okay, so
it's
it's running.
restarting at
See
some point.
over
Yeah.
here, yeah, it's just now restarting the Node-RED instance because it had installed. It's restarting. I like how I'm pointing at the screen, like you guys can see me pointing at the
But
screen.
in the meantime, we have a question from, yeah,
Mhm.
10 minutes ago. Is it okay if
Sure.
we answer it? I mean, in the meantime that InfluxDB is download on each device. So Rick Alberson asked if I have a customized Linux kernel and distribution built using Yocto, is there a way to make it a Balena client versus loading Balena OS? The quick answer is no. Basically, at Balena, we manage the operating systems ourselves. So to enable more and more customers just to add their hardware or their device types on Balena, So yeah, we can help them to quickly add new customize things on the kernel, etc. Um, One thing that you can test, but probably it doesn't work anymore, is to go to the balena.io website, go to the supervisor or the Balena engine and try to deploy. So if you go to the Balena engine page, I'm going to paste it here at some point. Try to run the Balena engine on the top of your Yocto operating system, and maybe then if you run the supervisor, you will be able to do this. Uh, if you want to run all the Balena suite, feel free, I don't know, to reach out to me or anyone from Balena, so I can help you on that. And we also can have a customized device type version for you, so that's not a problem either. But yeah, probably that was not the answer that you wanted, but this is how we do it these days.
So, did it answer a question or question answered?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay,
I,
so I ended up so the SD card that I have in my Raspberry Pi is a little bit slower, so it's taking a little time to install. So I switched over to Mark's, and it is installed and ready to go. And you can see now we have device ID, device name, device type, snapshot, and so forth. So now we've deployed our
nice.
first initial project. I'm now inside of that Pi remotely. And now can do any changes or edits I want. But the kind of thing that I want to do is do them in the cloud version. I want to do that in the cloud and just manage that there so that I don't have like in synchronous, you want everything to be in synchronization. So we're going to go back to our device. We go to webinar and we're going back to our cloud instance, which I believe I'm going to just kind of clean things up just a smidge so we don't have too many open editors. I did leave that device in excuse me, developer mode. I'm going to take it out of developer mode. And again, going back to the cloud, and we're going to open up the webinar application, which is our cloud. That's kind of like the orchestration management tool of this. And now that we have our initial data set being created, we are now going to want to drop in an InfluxDB application. So what we're going to do is we'll come over here to the left, say InfluxDB out batch, I believe we used. Let me just double check that on my screen.
Yeah.
Yep. And I'm going to maximize this so we can kind of see what's going on. And we are going to create a new instance. We're going to call this local and 172.86. And for now, we're gonna just call this my DB. And you'll see why I call it my DB in a second. We're gonna click add and deploy. Now, I don't have an InfluxDB running in my cloud, but this is where environment variables come into play. So let's say in my cloud environment, I could create an environment variable that is pointing and say, hey, if I'm in the cloud version, select to my Influx Cloud DB in the cloud for testing purposes. And then when I'm on-prem or let's say deployed to my devices, it's going to be using. We're going to kind of skip that step today. So you're not going to see it connect. We're now going to also bring in some additional things as well that is going to make our life pretty easy. So I'm going to copy these over just a second. Control export, selected nodes, copy to clipboard, import, paste, import. And now the first one that we're doing here is we're creating initialization. What we're doing is we need to create database MyDB. And then that's why I crawled it MyDB. We'll probably also need to
Yeah.
make sure that we are using the right local, but it shouldn't matter because this is going to be the same. Same with this one. And then we're going to create a read from this. I made the messages, if I use that correct, which is basically the table, the term that we're going to be loading data from, because what we're doing is fleet management. I thought a truck would be a perfect example with speed, gas, all the information coming from this particular device, and I'm going to deploy this. So again, we're not going to be able to do much right now, but what we can do is now take a snapshot and deploy it to all our devices in the field. So I'm going to go over here. We're going to create a new snapshot, and we're going to call this InfluxDB. and I'm going to set as target. And what we're
Mhm.
going to see, I'm going to move this over to the side so we can kind of watch things happen in real time on the right-hand side. So make sure I'm right in the right spot. And I'm going to click create, set as target. It's going to deploy all the devices in the field. You see that it changed from the initialization, and now it's trying to deploy to the targets in the thing. It's now getting that information here. You see on the right-hand side, it's taking that information, loading it in, and so even if we wanted to add a new Raspberry Pi to our fleet or a new device to our fleet of any flavor, as long as it's Balena supported, it's now going to take all this configuration and run right away. There's no orchestration or management that you need to do to make this happen. So it's really, really a good synergy of a solution. So let me refresh this page on the left-hand side, and we should start seeing, yep, everything is deployed to those devices. If I look at those devices, they are all now running and they've taken last seen. We'll jump into that same Raspberry Pi that we saw before. I click into developer mode and I click on device editor. You can see on the right-hand side, it's saying, hey, we're getting some commands, device editor, load it up. What are we doing on time? We got doing great. So now we're going to do what we're going to do is we got to inject some data. Remember, also in the initialize, I had this set up to inject once, one after 1 second or half a second or 0.1 seconds after it initially starts. So we've already created the database and you never have to do this again. So it initially just does it for us, creates our database. And now we're going to send some data. Let's make sure we open up our debug node and we're sending our data. And we can see that same payload that we created before. Have the measurement is truck, and we'll just add a couple. And now when I read from the database, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we should see 6 objects in our array that are from that data store. So what else can you do with this? When Mark mentioned the Ming stack earlier, that's a capability as well. So you can think about, hey, maybe I want to leverage the project nodes built into the FlowFuse application, which is basically a internal MQTT broker built into the solution. So you can automatically pipe this up to your cloud instance without having to bring in any if you don't want to do visualizations locally. Or you can leverage Dashboard 2.0 and build visualizations here. Or if you want the Grafana, you deploy Grafana to your Balena solution. I can't have engine, I guess you could say is the right one. Mark, correct me if I'm wrong. Or you can just pick your own MQTT broker. And so let's say you deployed MQT or Hive MQ, connect directly to that and pass any of that live streaming data into the environment. And in reality, you'd set this inject node to say, let's say on an interval between, let's say every 5 seconds, you want to start sending that data on. So I will pause here, see if there's any questions, if there's anything, Mark, that I skipped over. But I'll pause here for or see if there's anything. How did I do? How did I do running the Balena solution, the Balena cloud? Did I do good? Do I pass? You're on mute.
Sorry, I was coughing. Yeah, you did it. Awesome. So yeah, I think it was great. And as you said, I think it's a great synergy among FlowFuse and Balena, because yeah, at Balena we help you to manage all the application that is running on your fleet of IoT devices. Then something that we didn't show, you can update the operating system running on these devices. You can manage from the fleet point of view or from the device point of view. You did great adding the variable from the fleet point of view. And then with FlowFuse, it's amazing how you can manage all the business logics that your device is going to run visually and in a really simple and seamlessly way. So
Well,
I don't
perfect.
know. I think we
Oh,
have a couple of questions, but I'm sure that people has as well more and more questions. So feel free to ask on the chat, please.
yeah. And if you do have any questions, please put them. There's a Q&A place where you can add questions that will go directly to us, so we don't have to scroll as well, and know
Oh,
we can
well,
keep
okay.
track of which questions have been asked. So I'm going to open up. And is there any other alternatives we're doing on an edge device to the cloud orchestration besides export to flow? Is there any other alternative to propagate some changes? Oh, yeah, that's a great question. So let's talk about over here on FlowFuse. And if you're talking about the node red changes, we have what's called DevOps pipeline. So if I come over here and let me make sure I'm in the right application. So I go up to the application level. So we have applications and you have instances. If I'm working in the applications level, I can create what's called a DevOps pipeline. Where this is where I can create groups of devices that I want to deploy to. So maybe there's some uniquenesses between the devices. Let's say it's like version one hardware that you have on the site versus version two for that you want to kind of deploy to. And you can create a DevOps pipeline where you say, okay, well, this is the changes I want to do. And I'm going to pull, let's say, well, we can just create one right now. We can say webinar and we're going to call this add a stage, and we're going to say from a device, and then we want to say an action. And what I can say is prompt to use latest snapshot, prompt to select device snapshot, and create steps in which you want to be able to deploy things. And at the same time, you can deploy devices to devices depending on how you have it set up within the FlowFuse application, because you can assign devices into applications. You can define devices into instances as well. So there's a lot of different ways to kind of manage this. So I hope that answered the question for that orchestration piece, because I understand what you mean. You want to develop locally where you have, let's say, your dev device functioning and you want to deploy from a dev device to your field device because it's an exact same replica of your devices in the field. And so that is all part of our process and doable.
Yeah,
Hope I
there
answered
is
that
like a
question.
GitHub is there any GitHub solution as well for that, right? So you can have your flows on GitHub and import them, or how does it work with FlowFuse?
Oh, for flows, for how if I wanted to share this, so you go to flow node red.org, and then you go to flows,
Okay,
and it is a GitHub gist, I think is the correct way to pronounce it, but you have recent flows. So I'll come in here and I'll USB HID. And I've got USB HID. This is one of the things I've been working on recently. And if I scroll down, I can say leverage this flow that I've created. So let's say, for example, I want to share this. Now you can copy and export, and all you have to do is copy the JSON here and import it like you would do normally.
nice.
And it's very easy to update and add. So if I want to create a new flow, let's say, for example, we can just do this live here. And I'm not going to create this one over here because it's the full blown. Um, you won't see this, but I've got it organized very well. Let's say I want to create a new flow, and I'm going to call this Balena. Wait, I'm my brain. You weren't going to let me. There we go.
Ah,
Webinar. There we go. And now I give it a description. I can paste the flow in here, and when I create flow, it'll automatically be available. I'm not going to paste a
awesome.
description right now just because it's not going to look as pretty, and I want to make sure I do quality work. But it would create it for us. Now, the next thing that I want to see is how did I get the local devices you use to get the tag values? So if I go over here to environment variables and FlowFuse, these are the environment variables. And if I can open it up, these are all ones that are built in. So you have environment variables built into the Node-RED solution. But with FlowFuse, it makes it a little bit easier to manipulate those variables. And here's just an example of those. When I come over here to my pipelines and I look at my settings, where is applications? Maybe it's underneath my instances, webinar, and I look at settings, and then we have environment. These are my environment variables associated to my cloud that I have access to, and I can create new variables as well. If I go to my devices and I, let's say, look at this Pi and I go to settings, I also have customizable ones as well. So you can even, you may want to use your own customizable ones and create new variables and import. You can even create a list that imports as well. And there's a whole API system in the back end if you're starting to get into this orchestration, which obviously, if you're looking at fleet management, orchestration is going to be a big thing. There's an API back end that you can even integrate with your FlowFuse application. So you can say, I'm adding 15 devices. I want to add these environmental variables. I'm sure that will be all part of that orchestration process that you can do. So I hope that answered that question. Um, How did the
Nice.
local device get? Okay, perfect. That's the same question that I had that I think I just answered. Um, and if there's no more questions, I think I do have a couple questions that I've kind of set up for Mark for us. Um, so when you think about Balena, what are the most common deployments, aka what containers are most commonly installed? And I think we might have answered that a little bit earlier for the classic one, but give you a chance to kind of think about this and see which are the most common containers you see deployed.
Yeah, that's a very good question actually. And I would say it depends on the use case, but if I look at the top 100 containers deployed, I can see, for example, Node-RED on the top 25 list.
Mhm.
And we can see a bunch of databases and brokers and things like
Yeah.
that. But yeah, as you can imagine, maybe FlowFuse is as well the case. So Balena is very transversal, and we have all type of use cases running there, from edge AI applications with cameras and machine learning models to more simple things like or
So
gateways, LoRaWAN gateways, or things like similar.
So,
So
so really running edge analytics is going to be kind of when you start thinking. I've always had this vision of like everything went to the cloud, and then we're going to have this goal to push everything back to the edge, and that's kind of really where it boils down to is just like the synergy of figuring out what the right mix of cloud edge to your deployment is really going to boil down to it. That's good. So I think you already answered that. But the marketplace. Tell me the marketplace and where I can see the list of all these devices in which I can kind of mess around with. Because when you think of like FlowFuse, you're like, well, FlowFuse Node-RED integrates with a lot of other things. How do I know what other things I can integrate that's built into the Balena platform?
exactly. No, that's super good, and maybe that was it goes really well with this add flow thing from Node-RED, the flows Node-RED thing that you show. So if you go to app.balena.io, oh, you stopped sharing your screen.
Oh, sorry. I
Uh,
really the worst time to stop sharing. I'll share again.
no problem. But basically, we have this marketplace that I mentioned before, which is if you go to app.balena.io,
Hub.
we actually during the demo we show one way to deploy software on your fleet, which was clicking on the GitHub button of deploy with
Hmm.
Balena. We have multiple ways to deploy. We have a one from GitHub, another using the Balena CLI, and the deploy with Balena button. And basically, Balena Hub has like an evolution of these. Actually, maybe you can go to the Node-RED block that we have. We have three different types of applications that you can find on Balena Hub. Basically, the first is applications, which are applications with multiple containers running on these applications. The second that you saw on the main page are the blocks, which are one container that has a functionality that by them itself doesn't do anything, but along with other containers, you just reduce the friction to configure services and run it with other, like Node-RED. It's a perfect example, or for example, a database or the Telegraph from InfluxDB. It's a great example. So you just deploy the block from Telegraph, which it's called connector. You just edit it with the device variables from Balena, and it magically works. And finally, we have what we call fleets for good, which are companies or organizations or developers that what they want is to provide applications to a lot of people that are running edge devices that they can join. And basically the fleet owner, the company which has deployed these fleets for good on Balena Hub, will manage the software running on your edge device just because it's a fleet for good. But yeah, we have a mix of a lot of different people and developers who add their own fleet for good or kind of. So this is our marketplace where we can try to add what the community is building with Balena. So everyone is happy, is invited to add its own blog or app or fleet for good. And yeah, and all the instructions are there as well.
So, one of the questions that I'd like to maybe end on is how do you figure out which devices are supported? Which ones? Because I mean, there's a full suite of devices in possibilities to use with Balena, but you got to make sure you use your time wisely and make sure you support them with the maximum. How do you manage that, and where can I see, like, do you support things that are just, let's say, another container in which I want, like, let's say, how I'll let you answer. I'll let you answer.
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. This is one of the reasons why we use Yocto because it with BSPs from Yocto, it's easy to just make this Balena OS or Yocto compatible with a new hardware that doesn't exist. So if you go, for example, to balena.io/devices, you can see the list of all the devices that are compatible with Balena today. Um, yeah, sorry, we didn't have this prepared. But we support about 100 devices and other 100 on private mode. So usually companies come to us and say, okay, I have this specific hardware and I want to run Balena on it. How can you help us? So first step is if there is a VSP from Yocto on for this specific hardware, or usually sometimes it's a carrier board that is running a SOM or a specific compute module. So if you have the BSP, then we can create a new Balena OS for your hardware specifically. What happened a couple of years ago is that that was a bottleneck. So a lot of companies wanted to have a new Balena OS for their hardware. So what we
Hmm.
did was we created something that we call AutoKit, which is a hardware where you connect your hardware and we test new. So what issue we had? Basically a lot of new hardware was getting onboarded on Balena, but no, the Balena OS versions were not applying for that specific hardware because the company or whoever who created that Balena OS or ourselves we didn't have the hardware or we didn't have the time to make it compatible.
Hmm.
So now with AutoKit, with this hardware, so what we are trying to do is to automatize the tests for new Balena OS releases on this hardware. So all the new Balena OS versions can be tested on all the hardware that you see here on this list, and then gets available from the Balena Cloud. And it's open source basically, and anyone can use it. And basically, we are building as well this AutoKit as Balena Etcher, so anyone basically can get this AutoKit and use it for its own operating system.
So let's kind of close things out if that works for you. I'd like to kind of for you to get started when you do yours, because my last question was going to be like, well, how does the licensing structure work? So I want you to tie that into your. But if you want to get started with FlowFuse, go to a website, flowfuse.com, and give it a shot. We go free trial, and if you have any questions, you want to book a demo, there's links. And at the end of the survey, if you just want to click the link that says, "Hey, reach out to me," please do click that. And so, thanks for joining, and over to you, Mark.
Yeah, I think you can test Balena. It's free, up to 10 devices forever. So yeah, feel free to use it as I mentioned before. So you have the end-to-end open source stack. So if you, instead of using Balena Cloud, you want to deploy your own open Balena server, feel free to do it. As mentioned before, we support more than 100 device types, but our Balena OS is ready for any other hardware, and we are happy to help or happy to support. You can find me on the forums, and here as well there are my contact details in case that you want to contact me.
All right. Well, I think that is all. We are right on the dot. I'm gonna
Yeah,
just say thank you everyone for joining. This was a great experience. I'm glad that Mark and the Balena team joined, and we will be in touch. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach
yeah.
out. Thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.